So today we have a special guest. This is Crowe. She's an animation person that's been, wow, you've been around, you've done a lot of, worked on a lot of different films, and now you're actually teaching. So, and I actually got the chance to teach with you at Woodbury when we were there. So yeah, if you want to, so this is Crowe, and so what first got you into animation?
I loved animation since I was a kid, but I didn't really think about getting into it as a young person. As a girl in the South, I didn't even fathom that it could be a career. And as a teenager, I started getting interested in how it was done. Studying the Disney movies and the Warner Brothers and MGM cartoons a little more carefully. And then I discovered animation festivals, where the films that they showed were a little bit different, a little more experimental and a little more artistic. So that pushed me closer to it as well. But I really didn't start thinking of it as a career until I was a senior in college. Like, I got my BA in art, and I was just a drawing and painting major, and not really sure what I was going to do with it, ultimately. But as a senior, my teacher started asking me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life now? My one career aspiration had been to be a flight attendant, and a Sunday, what they call a Sunday painter. But one teacher gave me a brochure for Cal Arts, and the other teacher gave me a brochure for Sheridan. And my parents looked at each brochure and they said, well, this one in Canada is a lot less expensive. So I ended up going to Sheridan after I got my BA.
Okay. Yeah. Sheridan College. I mean, back in the 80s, I remember that as being the #1 school to go to, but you had to be a Canadian citizen, I think. How did you get around that?
Well, they developed this program. It was called the International Summer School of Animation, because they had so many people applying from other countries. But it was great because most of the people that were in the summer program were actually older. There were some people like me right out of getting my bachelor's, and then there were people in their 40s, people who just wanted to improve their animation skills. So that made for a really interesting atmosphere. But the people that were my teachers back then were Dick Friesen, Zlatko Grgic, Zach Schwartz, Jim McCauley. Tom Halley was in charge of the program at that point. He was a British guy who had worked on Yellow Submarine.
Wow. His name is Zach. You said it well. How does he say his name with the Z? Zach?
Zlatko Grgic.
Yeah, he kind of influenced me too. He had a film called Hot Stuff.
Yeah.
And I show that all the time in my classes, just so people can see that and see how fresh that is still. He seemed like he would be an interesting guy to learn from.
Great sense of humor in his drawing and in his animation. He was actually kind of shy in person. He liked to sit around and talk and discuss philosophy and discuss the art of animation, but he was pretty quiet.
Huh.
But it all came out in his films and his drawings.
What was your first job out of school, out of Sheridan?
So I got a job lead to this place called Carter Mendez, and it was in a little office on Ventura in Studio City. And I popped in and I met Floyd Norman. And Floyd said, well, we're actually moving our offices over to Burbank near the airport. So go see Leo Sullivan over there. So if you've seen Floyd's documentary, Leo is featured a lot in that. They had a business together even before I met them. There were a lot of young people out of Cal Arts there, like Chris Bailey and the late Kelly as. Hang on, I know my internet's unstable.
We might.
So anyway, there was this great studio, and we were working on this really fun cartoon. It was just this slapstick kind of Tex Avery style cartoon that starred the character Kissy Fur, which that character went on and had a TV show in the 80s, but this was way before that. And there we were just having fun working on this cartoon. We were like, I wonder where they're going to show this cartoon, you know?
Yeah.
And then they started talking about making a feature based on Huckleberry Finn. And then after a few months, it turned out that the whole thing was a front for a money laundering scheme.
Ooh, wow. There's some dirt.
The company, was this self-made millionaire, and his only connection to animation was, I think, he had dressed up as Goofy at Disneyland as a teenager. And he really did want to have his own animation company, but he was doing all this illegal stuff behind the scenes, and he actually served time. He actually went to jail.
Ooh, wow.
No, we did all collect our paychecks, and we all had a good time, and we made lifelong friends. But yeah, it was just a little fly-by-night place.
Wow. How did you go from that into, I guess, your next, like your main studio job?
Yeah, so the next place I worked long-term was Film Roman. And that was at the very beginning of Film Roman. I basically helped Phil start the company. I was receptionist, gopher, coffee maker, copy maker, assistant animator, person who ran to the store and bought toilet paper. I wrapped his Christmas presents. I did whatever. It was just like me and Phil and a cameraman, and that was the staff at that point. Because we had all these older guys that he had known when he was working for Chuck Jones. They were all coming in and picking up freelance, like Bill Littlejohn and Bob Givens and Lloyd Vaughn, people like that. Great old golden age guys coming in and picking up freelance on Garfield.
Oh, okay. So when they came in, they would just pick up their scenes or whatever, and then they just leave, or they come back, or they work there, or?
So they'd come in and pick up their scenes and take them home and work on them. The first special that he did was Garfield in the Rough, where it's a half-hour special where Garfield goes camping. It's pretty, still, it holds up. It's still pretty funny. And then the second one was Garfield's Halloween Adventure, which I've seen that one a little bit more online and in the DVD bin.
Oh, okay.
Well, after Film Roman came Filmation.
Oh, okay.
And I was at Filmation for a pretty decent amount of time, for animation anyway. I think I was there for 3 years. Working on feature films, really bad feature films.
Right.
But that feature unit, once again, it was just one of those family bonded kind of groups of people, where we're still in touch and we still get together when people, or we were when people could get together.
Right.
And I learned a lot. It was a good crew, and again, made a bunch of connections. I knew there were a handful of people that I knew from that very first job, like Bruce Smith. Mm-hmm. I met Bruce Smith at that first job at Carter Mendez, and then Bruce was also at the Filmation feature unit. Okay. So character cleanup and on those bad feature films. One was about Snow White. It was called Happily Ever After. And then actually before the Snow White one was a Pinocchio one called Pinocchio and the Emperor of the Night.
Okay.
I use examples from that film to show students how not to stage. It's mostly about like really bad storyboarding and bad staging. And bad storytelling too.
Right.
So bad. There's a scene where Pinocchio and his friends have to go save Geppetto, and then the bad guy shrinks all of them, so they're all shrunken. And,
that's good, because that actually, you don't have to draw as much, if you think about it, right?
Smaller on the screen.
Yeah.
Where they're escaping, and they're running, and they get to a door, and they can't reach the doorknob, and so Pinocchio says, I know, I'll use my nose. All I have to do is lie. And so he stands there and he says, I hate my father and I don't like ice cream and stuff.
That's perfect.
His nose grows so that he can reach the doorknob and open the door. So it's like so contrived.
Right.
So from there I went to Bob Rogers, and I mentioned to you before that I worked on that project called Back to Neverland, and Bob Rogers subcontracted that from Disney, and it was the thing with Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite, which they showed in the Florida attraction where you go through and see the animation studio,
Right.
and they showed it to explain how animation is done. So that's on YouTube. It's really, really a sweet little film. Robin Williams often said that was one of his very favorite things to work on because it was such low pressure and fun. And yeah, and also it kind of gave the directors of Aladdin the idea to use Robin for the voice of the genie. He does like an improvisational comedic riff where he's just talking really fast. And, you know, that one little part in Back to Neverland where he's like, I'm sleepy, I'm dopey, I'm Doc, I'm grumpy, I'm a corporate symbol. You know, they use that in Aladdin, you know, same kind of thing, fast patter where they just animate whatever it is he's saying.
Right, right.
Really fun.
Good.
So I was the key assistant on Captain Hook on that one.
Oh, on Captain Hook. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I followed up Bruce Smith and Mark Kausler. I don't know if you know Mark Kausler.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if Bruce Smith is in a clip in one of those.
Oh, yeah, he is.
Yeah, that was him. Okay.
The animator.
Yeah. They're talking about animation and they're looking at his drawings and he's, you know, just happened to finish the scene and hands it.
Yeah, right, just as they walk up.
Oh, I just finished this. Yeah. Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to interview him for Hair Love. Yeah, so I got to talk to him a little bit about that.
Yeah, nice guy.
So then you worked on that, and then...
That led to Little Mermaid. Basically, they hired everybody that worked on Back to Neverland. They brought over to Little Mermaid. And it was interesting. I saw Bob Rogers at a party not too long ago, like a couple of years ago. And I hadn't seen him in decades. And I said, I loved working for you. I had so much fun working on Back to Neverland. And he said, yeah, you know, it's interesting. He said, we got ready to work on that. And Disney told us, oh, you won't be able to find any good animators. We've got them all.
Oh.
There's no way you're going to be able to match the quality of Disney because we got all the good animators, you know? And it was kind of cool because we proved him wrong.
Yeah.
But then they hired all of us on Little Mermaid.
Well, that's good. I mean, that was kind of like your training. You're you know, to prove to them that you can do the work. So that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So then I went on Little Mermaid and I worked on King Triton.
Ah.
So I spent about 9 months on Triton and about 3 months on Sebastian. But I think I did the same amount of work because Triton was so gigantic and he was always filling up the picture. And
now, were you assistant animator? Were you doing in-betweens or just cleanup?
I was assistant animator. I wasn't the lead key, but I was doing quite a bit of key work on Triton, following up Andreas. Mm-hmm. I think my credit says something else, but you know, that can be a little political sometimes.
Yeah.
But I was doing a lot of key work and following up Andreas, and then switched over to the Sebastian crew toward the end of the project because Sebastian had a lot of footage. He was in the movie a lot.
Yeah.
And they got a little bit behind. And Sebastian was so much easier and faster. I could, you know, and he's always so teeny in the screen. You know, it would take an hour or two to do a Triton drawing.
Wow.
It would take as much as 2 hours to do a Triton drawing.
Oh, yeah.
And they didn't want you to rush it. You know, they wanted it to look good. So, but then Sebastian, I could whip out a little Sebastian drawing in 15 minutes. So.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine. I mean, Triton is this huge drawing, you know, big muscles and all the detail and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And those cuffy things.
Yeah.
There's another word for whatever those are. Those. Plus, he had all that long hair and beard, and he's underwater, so that means that the long hair and the beard are moving all the time. But it was fun. It was really a fun challenge. And then I went back to Bob Rogers, and we were working on some things for Expo 90. And because Bob Rogers, his specialty was amusement parks, doing projects for amusement parks.
Oh, okay.
So that's why we were working on some stuff for Expo 90. And I was started as character cleanup, but moved over into effects animation. I think maybe they had an effects animator or two that left for better jobs. And my friend sitting next to me was another character cleanup person, and someone walked, the production manager walked in the room and said, "Does anybody know how to do effects?" And my friend spoke up and said yes. And this was somebody I'd known for a while, and I was kind of like, "I don't know how to do effects."
Yeah.
When have you ever done effects? I didn't say it out loud, but I was like, "What?" So they gave her a scene to animate, which she did, and then she went back. She went to Disney, on whatever Disney was doing at that point. Mm-hmm. And so a couple of weeks went by, and the same thing happened again. The production manager walked in and said, "Can anybody do effects?" And I spoke up and said I could. So that was how I got into it. And I don't even really remember what the scene was. I think it might have been something related to water. Not a big dramatic splash, but maybe some ripples or some reflections or something like that.
Mm-hmm. All the effects are done after they've animated everything. You kind of come in and...
Generally, yeah, especially if the effect is going to be working with the character. You have to have the character finished up first. Actually, I do remember a little bit later on that job, I did kind of become like an official effects animator, but I don't know if you know Esther Barr. Esther Barr was also on there. She's an effects animator. She's retired, but she had me doing a lot of pixie dust. There were 2 projects that we were doing for Expo 90, and the second one had a lot of pixie dust in it. So she taught me how to do that, and that's become kind of an effects specialty of mine. I love doing pixie dust.
Yeah. I got to do some pixie dust on a Hamburger Helper commercial once.
Watch me turn plain tuna into a real creamy meal. Creamy Noodle Tuna Helper. With oodles of creamy noodles your family will love.
Creamy Noodle Tuna Helper makes a great meal.
You'll love the way it disappears.
The Hamburger Helper hand in the 80s was just a white glove. We don't know where it came from. They don't talk about that, but he can cook. And I remember doing all that pixie dust. Each drawing took me like a half hour to do. I mean, with all the little, and I was trying to animate every single little pixie dust. And I did like about 40 or almost 40 or 50 of these. Uh-huh. And I took it into the director, and I handed it to him, and he's looking through it, and he's going, "Okay, take this out, take this out, take this one out." It's like half an hour and a half.
There's that one Cinderella scene where where the fairy godmother changes her dress.
Right.
The pixie dust swirls up, all the way up Cinderella. It's just great. And Cinderella kind of goes like that, and the pixie dust kind of goes off of her fingertips. And
right.
It's almost like there's 2 little invisible fairies. That's how it works. Like they're flying around her, and they even tie her hair up, but there's no fairies. It's just the dust. You know what I mean? Like an invisible force,
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you went from that, and after Little Mermaid, you went on to other Disney films?
Rescuers Down Under.
Mm-hmm.
I worked at Bluth briefly before Rescuers Down Under. And again, doing effects. It's on YouTube also, in an amusement park attraction. And it's called The Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera.
Ooh.
And it was done for Universal Florida.
Ah.
And it's a motion-based ride like Star Tours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm freezing again. I have a feeling I'm going to freeze soon.
Yep. Okay, hold that thought. At the amusement park.
So that one was called The Funtastic World of Hanna-Barbera. And the plot is that Dick Dastardly kidnaps Elroy Jetson, and he's in a time machine. But it's a rocket ship time machine, and the purpose of that is to go through all the Hanna-Barbera lands. So you start in Flintstones land, and then you go to this 1960s Scooby-Doo haunted house land, and then you go to the future with the Jetsons. But the audience is in a ship with Yogi and Boo Boo, who are going to save Elroy. Again, kind of convoluted, but anyway,
Yeah.
it's online too. It's pretty fun. And I got to do a lot of really, really juicy effects on that one. Lots of water and sparks and explosions and fire and smoke and a beauty parlor crash. They gave me the beauty parlor crash because I'm a girl and I know how to animate beauty supplies flying through the air.
Oh God. Let's see. Who can we get? Joey, can you? Let's see. We need someone that knows mascara bottles and Lee. Oh, thank God.
Yeah. So the way they foil Dick Dastardly is somehow they run him into a beauty supply store.
Yeah.
And he comes out in drag. That's the joke. Ha ha ha.
Right.
But
So
when he crashes, yeah, all these things like curlers and curling irons. And I even drew one of those things that you put on your toes when you're doing a manicure that looks a little bit like an amoeba. You know, it's a foam rubber thing. And my producer's like, what is that? And I'm like, that's a toe separator. Don't you know what a toe separator is?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, that should be there.
So that was another fun project. Yeah.
So,
and then Rescuers Down Under, effects assisting. I think I went from that to Rover Dangerfield. Throughout most of the 90s, I was doing effects, either effects assisting or effects animating. You know, there were not a lot of women that were full-fledged animators. And I learned a lot from Esther, who I mentioned before, and then Kathleen Quaife. She was my supervisor on Rover Dangerfield. And I did a lot of smoke. So other than pixie dust, I also like to do smoke. Mm-hmm. And of course, also you have to do a lot of shadows when you're an effects animator. You know, nobody wants to do shadows or props. Those are the throwaway scenes. You know, people want to do the dramatic explosions and smoke and fire and water splashes. And it's like, yeah, but we also have to do the shadows and the props.
Yeah.
You know, a lot that goes into that. People think of it as kind of a thrown off, unimportant job, but you really need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, especially when it comes, like I said, light source and 3-dimension. You know, you're trying to turn a 2D thing into a 3D thing, basically. Right. What happened after that? I think Cool World.
I just remember seeing that and going, okay, what? Okay, you got the girl, and you got I think, what was it? What's
Brad Pitt?
Brad Pitt was in it. That was like his first animated film, I think.
And Gabriel Byrne.
Yeah. And you know, those are pretty good actors. And then, you know, the animation was pretty good, but there was just so much of these little like characters that would just kind of enter the frame and do something, and then they exit the frame. And I was like, you know, you kind of like, what was that?
And his answer would be, that's Cool World. That's what it's like when you go to Cool World.
Cool World is like that. Things are cool.
So Cool World was fun to work on. Actually, I got along with Ralph pretty well. It was interesting because so many people did not get along with him.
Yeah.
And he was kind of a blatant harasser. It's like he wasn't secretive about it at all. You know? God, one person said recently, Ralph Bakshi, you know, during the Me Too movement, which I support completely, somebody said, Ralph Bakshi's going to get his now. And I'm like, he already got his because he was blatant. And he used to get in trouble back then. So it's not going to come back and bite him in the now. Excuse me, I said ass.
I know. I mean, he seemed to be the type of guy that would just say, you know, you just knew that this guy's going to do stuff like that. And he's not trying to hide it. He just, sorry.
Yeah.
So
if he ever, he didn't try that kind of stuff with me too often because I don't know. I don't think I was his type. But if he ever did say stuff, I would just laugh and I'd just say, I got a scene to work on. I was hired as an effects animator, and I was it. I got there and I was like, I'm it. I'm the effects department.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
And Ralph would call me in his office and he'd like, I want you to animate this blah, blah, whatever you would say. He's like, this guy's eating some wood and I want some wood chips to fly, and I'm like, okay, okay, I can do this. But I kept saying, Ralph, you need to hire me a boss. I haven't been doing this long enough to, be the only effects animator. I don't really know enough, but you need to hire me somebody that's a little more knowledgeable. Just hire me a manager, please. So once again, we got Esther Barr, who had already been kind of a mentor to me. And she was there for a pretty good amount of time, maybe 9 months, something like that. And she just couldn't handle his personality. He was just way too rough. I don't blame her one bit. There were a lot of women, especially. There were a lot of people of both genders that just would quit. He wouldn't even fire people that much. He would just make their life miserable and they'd quit, So, so she left at some point. But at that point, I had been following her around whenever she had meetings with him and stuff. And I learned the ropes. And so by the time she left, I was able to supervise the effects myself at that point. We had built up a good crew.
So after that, when did you start to get into teaching? So you said you went back and got your master's, I guess?
Yeah. So 2001, things were slowing down out here as far as hand-drawn domestic features, which is kind of what my specialty had been. I had not worked in television very much. I worked as a timer in 1999 on King of the Hill. And that was my first foray into timing. And then Osmosis Jones. Osmosis Jones was sort of Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. Those were the last couple of things that I worked on, here in town as far as hand-drawn features. So I decided to go back to school in 2001. And Savannah College of Art and Design was one of the few places. I wanted to major in illustration. I wanted to get my master's in illustration because I wanted to enhance my traditional art skills. I didn't feel like a master's in animation was going to do me that much good as an artist, So there weren't very many places that had masters in illustration. So that was one of the reasons I chose SCAD back then. And I'm from Atlanta, so it would put me close to my parents in their old age. And so I got my master's there. And then I worked for them briefly, but not as a teacher. I supervised on a special student project and then moved to Atlanta because there was an opportunity in Atlanta to work at the Art Institute there. So my first job in education was actually as a department chair. Talk about trial by fire. It was interesting being a manager of teachers when I had never been a teacher before.
Wow. So how did you handle that?
It wasn't easy, but I learned a lot. I was a department chair for 2 years and, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. We had really great teachers. We had really great students, and we had problem teachers and we had problem students, and I just had to work very, very closely with human resources a lot. Just anytime I didn't know what, and the dean too, anytime I was just like, this is unprecedented. I've never had to deal with anything like this before. What do I do? And I just went to them a lot. Did what they told me.
So you were teaching there, and then you decided to come back to LA again? Okay.
So I moved back, and I had a connection at the Art Institute out here, and I worked there. It was the same kind of situation where it's adjunct, but I have a full load. So enough to pay the bills, But then that whole company, I think they might have a few schools left, but they're pretty much shut down now.
So then you went to CSUN and you worked there for teaching animation?
I've been teaching pretty much nothing but Animation 1 at CSUN, which is the basics. Bouncing ball, waving flag, two-legged walk. I have them do a walk across, and I also have them do a walk cycle in the center. And then we do a flour sack. So then at the end of that class, they have an open project. Again, I think it's pretty short, 10 to 30 seconds. It's like, okay, now do something that you'd want to put on your reel or you'd want to put in a festival. It can be anything you want. You know, it can be motion graphics, it can be digital, it can be hand-drawn, it can be stop motion, but it needs to look good and professional.
But you concentrate more on the animation, like doing the...
Yeah, that's the bulk of it, are those basic exercises.
So much teaching is just trying to get the principles down.
Because I get this wide mix. Non-majors are allowed to take that class as an elective, which I'm not crazy about that because I get math majors and psych majors, and I tell them on the first day, you're going to need to know how to draw. It's going to be simple drawing, but you're going to need to know how to draw to do this. And so I get the wide range, and I get people who they totally know how to do resumes and websites, and I get people that have never done one at all. I get people that have never had a job at all, like not even a retail or a fast food job, So that's why I'm not too hard on them grade-wise. It's like if you already have a resume and a website, you can turn that in. That's fine. They just want to know you know how to do it.
Right. And so now you got a new job at SCAD, so you're going to be headed that way for the fall, I guess?
What they're saying right now, and I hope they're going to change their minds really soon, is that they're saying on ground right now. But they are on the quarter system, and they make their final decisions about the following quarter. They make it at midterm, the previous quarter, and their midterm's not until July 20th. So I have a feeling that on July 20th, they will make a decision, and hopefully it won't be on ground. It'll either be a hybrid or it'll be online.
Ah, okay.
But yeah. I have friends in Georgia that are that teach in the public school system, elementary school and high school, and they're going on ground, and they're fighting it.
Wow.
Yeah, the state's basically making them meet in person, but the teachers' unions are fighting it.
Wow. Do you have any advice for students that are getting into animation? What's your advice to them?
Well, I still emphasize drawing. Practice your drawing skills. I feel like just about anybody that wants to be able to draw well can get better with practice. It helps to have a good teacher, of course, but you just have to draw all the time. Carry a sketchbook around with you and draw all the time. And even if you are going to get into CG, you still need to be able to draw well to really compete. It's not just a matter of pushing a button that says animate on the computer.
That's control animate. You got to push.
Oh, yeah, that's what I've been missing. Control
A.
Option. Yeah. One thing I try to tell students over and over again is consider it remarkable to make a living as an artist. It's remarkable to be able to do this and keep it up and not have to have another sideline, and it's not a good thing. I wish it were different. And we need to be, vigilant about not letting companies take advantage of us. But in the meantime, we've just got to be aware that it's not always going to be steady or easy, Do
you have any other things going on that we don't know about, or?
Well, when we were kind of running through my history, I didn't say anything about Cats Don't Dance, and I feel like I need to
that was a great movie. Yeah, I love that film.
That was my favorite thing to ever to work on. And so I just have to give it a little plug. So it was a great crew, great director. I learned a lot from both the director and the supervisor. Mark Dindal was the director and Mark Myers was the effects supervisor. And they were just both really available. So I learned a lot about how to be a teacher from good movie directors. Like to be available. Mark Dindal was available to the lowliest, beginning in-betweener. And that's Rocket, by the way.
Oh, there he is. Hello.
And then Mark Meyer was one of those supervisors that was really good at coupling the feedback, like telling you what you did right first. Like, that looks really good. And where you might want to improve it is blah, 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 So you do your corrections, but you don't feel bad.
Right. That's good.
Yeah, that was a really fun project.
All right. Well, thanks again, Lee, for coming on Animated Educated. I want to thank you again for telling us what you've been doing, and wish you luck on your new career.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. That was Lee Crowe, animator and also now an educator who's going to be at SCAD this fall, teaching online possibly, or being there in person. So if you're enrolled at SCAD, check her out. Let us know what you think. Yeah, she's been through a lot of, animation history, and she knows what she's talking about. So yeah, I really appreciate her coming on the show here, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. You can actually leave a comment below, let other people know what you think of the show. And if you would, please, let me just lean over and subscribe right over there to this YouTube channel, Animated Educated, spelled oddly, I know, but that's how you pronounce it. And yeah, the next video coming up is that one right there. And we'll see you next time on Animated Educated.